as the waves of the Adriatic Sea gently brush against the rocky shores of the Gulf of Trieste. Carrying the scent of salt and the whisper of distant horizons, something luminous rises from the edge of land and water. A pale white jewel, suspended between sky and sea. This is not a cold military fortress. This is Miramare. In Spanish, its name means, to look at the sea. And that is precisely what it does. It does not turn inward toward courts and politics. It turns outward toward infinity. Breathe deeply. Can you feel the stillness here? Only the rhythm of the waves. The cry of distant seagulls. The wind moving softly through the dark cypress trees of the terraced gardens. Miramare possesses a beauty that feels almost painful. Its elegance does not shout. It stands alone, proud, and quietly melancholic. Its story begins like a fairy tale, but it ends like a Greek tragedy. In 1855, a young Habsburg archduke named Maximilian discovered this wild promontory during a violent storm. His ship had sought shelter along the Trieste coast. When the sea calmed and the mist cleared, he saw this cliff rising above the Adriatic. And he fell in love. Maximilian was not a rigid politician. He was a romantic, a dreamer, a poet at heart. He was also commander of the Austrian Navy, and the sea was woven into his spirit. He decided to build a home here. Not a symbol of war, but a sanctuary. A place where land stretches forward to embrace the ocean. He built it for his young bride, Princess Charlotte of Belgium. And thus, Miramare was born. Look closely at its architecture. It is an unusual but harmonious blend of Gothic revival, medieval elements, and Renaissance inspiration. Its white stone gleams against the blue sea. Its towers rise with gentle symmetry. But the true magic lies inside. When you step into Maximilian's private study and bedroom, something curious happens. The ceilings are low. The walls are paneled with polished oak. The rooms feel like the cabin of a ship. The windows frame the sea directly. Even from his bed, Maximilian could hear the waves crashing against the rocks. He designed Miramare not merely as a castle, but as a ship anchored in stone. Those were the happiest years of their lives. Maximilian and Charlotte created their own world here. They painted. They played the piano. They walked through the vast gardens, which Maximilian filled with exotic plants brought from his voyages around the globe. Palm trees, rare shrubs, species gathered from distant continents. They called Miramare their little paradise, a private Eden overlooking the Adriatic. But royal happiness is often fragile. In 1863, a delegation arrived from distant Mexico. They carried an offer that glittered with temptation. The crown of Emperor of Mexico. Maximilian hesitated. He loved his peaceful life at Miramare. But Charlotte was ambitious. Royal blood ran fiercely in her veins. She dreamed of ruling an empire. She urged him to accept. And so, beneath the crystal chandeliers of Miramare's Grand Hall, Maximilian agreed. It was the turning point. The day they left Trieste, the sea was restless. The wind howled. The waves struck violently against the cliffs. Locals whispered that Neptune himself was warning them. They departed filled with hope. But they would never return together. In Mexico, the dream unraveled quickly. Civil war erupted. Political alliances collapsed. French troops withdrew their support. Maximilian found himself isolated. Charlotte, desperate, returned to Europe to seek aid. She came back to Miramare, not as a triumphant empress, but as a frightened woman unraveling under pressure. She locked herself inside the castle. She stared endlessly at the sea. Waiting, praying, hoping for news. And then, in the summer of 1867, the message arrived. Maximilian had been captured by Republican forces. He was executed by firing squad. Before he died, he reportedly cried out, "Viva Mexico!" and softly whispered the name of his beloved wife. His death shattered Charlotte's mind. She fell into permanent madness. For the rest of her life, she lived in delusion, convinced that her husband still lived and would return. The halls of Miramare, once filled with music and laughter, grew silent. Only the echo of grief remained. Over time, a legend began to grow around the castle. A curse. It is said that anyone who sleeps overnight in Miramare will die young in a foreign land. Strangely, history seemed to feed the myth. Duke Amadeo of Aosta died in a prisoner of war camp in Africa. Empress Elizabeth of Austria, the beautiful Sisi, who often visited Miramare, was assassinated in Geneva. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who stayed here, was assassinated in Sarajevo, igniting the First World War. Coincidence? Or something darker woven into the sea air? Perhaps Miramare's beauty is too perfect. Perhaps the gods grow jealous. Today, Miramare stands more radiant than ever. White stone glowing under the Mediterranean sun. Marble sphinxes guarding garden pathways. The sea shimmering beneath golden sunset light. It looks like molten gold against deep blue water. Yet beneath its splendor lies a quiet sadness. Miramare is not merely a castle. It is a monument to a love story interrupted. It reminds us that power and crowns are fleeting. The Mexican throne, heavy with diamonds, proved worthless compared to those peaceful evenings spent listening to waves at Miramare. Maximilian had love. He had art. He had a dream carved into stone. And he traded it for an illusion of empire. When you leave Miramare, turn back one last time. You will see it standing there, solitary and dignified, facing the endless sea. Like a faithful widow. Forever waiting for a ship that will never return from beyond the horizon. Thank you for listening to the story carried by wind and waves at Miramare today. I hope this bittersweet beauty has touched something deep within your heart. If you enjoy these journeys through history and emotion, please consider subscribing to our channel. There are many more castles, many more legends, and many more whispered stories waiting for us. Until our next chapter in this timeless journey. Farewell, Miramare. And goodbye, Candle Wave Sparkles.
Mm-hmm.